Zaka ready with brass tacks.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. US President Joe Biden made a surprise stopover in Kyiv today, the first time he has done so since this war began. Later this week, it's going to be exactly a year since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine. Biden's 5-hour stopover sends an unequivocal message of solidarity with Ukraine, that America and its allies are firmly standing by Ukraine. But how is this going to change the much talked about spring offensive, both from Russia as well as from Ukraine? Will today's visit and the symbolism of it, the optics of it, and of course the material announcement that he made of $500 million more of military aid to Ukraine, would that possibly deter Putin's intentions?
Days before Ukraine marks a year since the Russian invasion, US President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky walked on the streets of Kyiv as air raid sirens rang the air. The trip was shrouded in secrecy. Biden was on his way to Poland and stopped over in Kyiv for 5 hours, underscoring that the US is prepared to stick with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Biden and Zelensky laid a wreath at the Wall of Remembrance for the fallen heroes of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And then the two leaders held talks at the presidential palace.
President Biden, that is so important signal for us.
I was warning the world.
Biden announced an additional $500 million military aid package for Ukraine and vowed Washington's support in defending Ukraine's territorial integrity.
People of Ukraine. 1 year later, Kyiv stands, and Ukraine stands. Democracy stands. The Americans stand with you, and the world stands with you.
Zelensky said the military aid will ensure that Russia does not stand a chance of winning this war.
These conversations brings us closer to the victory, and we hope that this year, the 2023, will become a year of victory and the solid guarantees of the long-term security for our country as well as the Europe and the whole world.
The war was anyway expected to intensify in the coming months as both sides prepare for spring offensives. But will Biden's visit be a turning point in the conflict?
So why exactly is Biden's surprise visit to Kyiv at this point so significant? It comes days before Ukraine will mark 1 year since Russia's invasion. That's going to be exactly 5 days from now on Friday. It's Biden's first visit to Ukraine since this war began on the 24th of February last year. The trip comes even as Russia is preparing for a possible spring offensive, including air attacks. In offering military aid, the US is arming Ukraine to retake territory from Russia. The visit also offers a singular image of American support and, by consequence, America's allies in Europe, their support for Zelensky. CNN's Clarissa Ward describes the atmosphere in Kyiv during US President Biden's surprise meeting, where he was in the city for about 5 hours.
We just watched this whole thing take place behind us, so I want to give our viewers a feel for this momentous visit and what it felt like from this perspective, watching on the ground. You can see that St. Michael's Church in the background there. President Biden and President Zelensky arriving in a huge motorcade, entering the church from behind. They spent about 5 minutes in there. Just before they exited the church, we could hear the air raid sirens beginning to wail again. That was allegedly due to MiG activity over Belarus. It's a fairly common occurrence, but certainly not so common or a little more nerve-wracking, let's say, when the President of the United States makes an unannounced visit to Kyiv. The two leaders then walked out of the church together. They followed behind two soldiers who were carrying wreaths and went and sort of delivered those wreaths to this wall of the fallen soldiers, commemorating some of those many soldiers who have lost their lives. They stood there for a moment to pay their respects, and then we saw them embrace, showing, I think, the sort of rapport that these two leaders do have. President Biden then re-entered his motorcade. And I should add, it is a very large motorcade. There have been sightings of it across Kyiv all morning. There has been kind of an electric atmosphere with people popping up on Twitter and social media and speculating, who is this foreign delegation? Who is this visitor? Could it be President Biden? And even though, to a certain extent, the city was crippled in parts because of this visit, because so many of the roads were shut down, there were huge traffic jams, the metro stations were overwhelmed, you certainly haven't heard anybody complaining. There is a sense here that people are very happy to have received this visit. It's a really important moment in this war where morale has been getting a little bit low, and this is a much needed boost. And you've heard President Zelensky say that in the past, that it would send such a strong and important signal across the world to have the U.S. leader visit here. And today, this morning, we saw that playing out. There was very tight security. We're up here on this balcony. We were not allowed to come out onto the balcony. We were visited by soldiers on several occasions throughout the morning, warning us that there would be snipers on the roof, that we needed to stand back away from the windows, actually asking us to close the curtains at some point, because this is a big deal. And there had been a lot of speculation that it might happen, but a lot of concern as to how you navigate the security around that. And now, as I mentioned, just however long ago it was now, 20 minutes ago, we actually watched this momentous occasion play out in real time.
So one of the announcements that President Biden made was an additional $500 million of military aid to Ukraine. So how much aid has the U.S. and its allies given to Ukraine since the start of this war? The Biden administration and the U.S. Congress have provided over $45 billion to Kyiv so far. Another $13 billion has come in the form of budgetary support to the government of Ukraine. Another $9 billion package is in the works with Congress. And now the U.S. president has promised a further $500 million worth of weapons to Kyiv in his visit. Meanwhile, Biden's visit also comes at a time when the U.S. and China are locked in a war of words on whether Beijing is sending arms to Russia to assist it in the war in Ukraine. China has denied this allegation, saying that it will never accept U.S. finger-pointing or coercion in China-Russia ties. But Beijing has not outrightly condemned Russia for the ongoing war. If China does indeed lend military support to Russia, it could spark a new Cold War. This could trigger mistrust and suspicion, and the world would be divided into two opposing camps. And this could have very serious ramifications for economies across the globe. I want to first go across to my colleague Sanjay Suri, who's joining us live. Sanjay, this is a momentous visit, no doubt about it, because the U.S. president, for the first time since this war began, dropping in there for a 5-hour visit. It was also substantial in terms of the material support that he has announced today, $500 million of military aid more to Ukraine. But what is going to be the immediate sort of precipitating factor from this visit? Because everybody is talking about how we're approaching the 1-year anniversary, how Russia is preparing for the spring offensive. How is this visit going to be seen from the vantage of the Kremlin?
Of arms announced is not a lot, considering, as you were pointing out, that the US has given $25 billion worth of weapons to Ukraine. But the immediate follow-up really is going to be what Kremlin makes of it. And Biden, no doubt, delivered a fine speech, but again, that is nothing new. He has not said anything that he has not said before. What matters is that he said it in Kyiv. You would say that the symbolism of this or the optics of it, in fact, is so strong that we probably need to go beyond expressions like symbolism and optics. Perhaps you would think that the visit itself politically was handing to Ukraine a weapon that is one of the strongest that the US. So that is going to go down very dramatically. That if you mess with Ukraine, try to escalate it. And Putin has been issuing fears of the nuclear option. If the Russians were to try and escalate it, then that the US is going to be very solidly and fully behind Ukraine, with Ukraine. And this is the message that is going out to Kremlin, going out to Putin, and no doubt to Beijing as well.
And very quickly, I found the last couple of minutes of that press conference quite revealing, where Joe Biden basically said, "We're going to stand by you for as long as it takes." And then he came across and shook hands with Zelensky, and he said, "We'll get it done." So does that mean we are looking at this war continuing for the next few weeks, months, God knows how long, till Ukraine wins? I mean, he said it in as many words today.
Well, how long this war continues really is, to an extent, in Putin's hands. It is he who can stop the war anytime, as Biden has pointed out on several occasions before, as have others. But really, the situation does appear to point to a prolonged war yet. Putin is showing no sign that he's going to pull back or hold back. In fact, he is preparing a stronger offensive as we speak. The fact is that Putin will have to be contained. He'll have to be stopped. He has to be tackled from a position of strength. And it is a position of strength that Biden.
All right, Sanjay, we'll try and come back to you. But thank you very much for joining us. He's the only Indian reporter of a major Indian network right now reporting from Kyiv. So I think it's been a momentous visit, this, by Joe Biden, and our reporter was there covering it for you. Let me open this up to our panelists who are joining us. G. Sarthi, former diplomat, joining us. Dr. Sergei Dvoryanov is president of IDC Russia. Colonel retired Lawrence Selin is a former army officer of the U.S. Army. And we're also joined by Peter Zalmayev, who is a senior journalist from Kyiv. Let me start with Dr. Dvoryanov. The battle on the ground had reached a bit of a stalemate, particularly in the Donbass. It had been going on for the better part of the last year. And the consensus seemed to be that till this spring offensive, quote unquote, happens, we're going to see this kind of a stalemate. By visiting Kyiv today and the images of solidarity and the $500 million of military aid that's been announced, does this send a message to the Kremlin that America and its allies are standing by Ukraine 100%, and as Joe Biden said, to quote his words, for as long as it takes?
First of all, I want to say visit of Joe Biden to Poland, of course, it's like a very symbolic action, because we know that the national leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, tomorrow will give his message to the peoples, to the nation, and to the member of parliament. And everybody expecting and waiting for this message. And Joe Biden show openly his solidarity. But we can see in the current situation, all European leaders, there is like a competition between all of them to show that they are solidarity. Yes, with the, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on, Dr. Dvoryanov. Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, go on, I can hear you, yeah.
Yes, nice. I mean, all European leaders, they try their best to support Ukraine and to be a hero. It's like a drama, like entertainment. We can see it's like a media war. Everybody, like a Zelensky fan club, try to be very friendly to him and show their solidarity. And that is a point to be a good friend of America.
Okay,
right
Peter
now,
Zalmayev, it's at the one hand, you could look at today's visit and say it's high on symbolism, it's high on optics, but he also backed it up with another $500 million, Peter, of military aid. So how long is this sort of tap going to be in free flow? At some point, the West is going to say that, oh, all right, we've committed too much of our money and too much of our weapons and too much of our time into this war in Ukraine. My question is to Peter Zalmayev, please. Yes, Peter.
India, you hit the nail on his head with this question. There's a question of urgency. Obviously, we're talking about electoral democracies, unlike Russia, which is increasingly turning not just to a harsher form of authoritarian governance, but a full-blown totalitarian one, and where Vladimir Putin, is ruling by fiat, and it's actually been his decision to go to war, and no one has been able to say no to him. Well, these countries, the US, France, Germany, they have electorates, and electorates are obviously restless. They will demand results. Each such round of assistance, they want to see results. If there is a stalemate, there will be questions raised. After a few very successful counteroffensives earlier in the fall, now we are talking about a certain stalemate. Ukraine is now getting more and more sophisticated weaponry, so there is pressure on Ukrainians to perform, to stage another spectacular counteroffensive. I would suspect part of the reason why Joe Biden was there is to encourage Ukrainians to move as soon as they can, and it also connects with his chances of being reelected in 2024. He doesn't want Republicans, if there's a protracted war in Ukraine, to point fingers at Biden and say, look, he got us he got us out of Afghanistan in a very shameful manner, and he got us stuck in Ukraine. He's very mindful of that, and therefore there's expectations Ukraine will be able to stage a counteroffensive, win back as much territory as it can, so that then it can sit down and negotiate with the Russians on its terms.
How easy or difficult would that be, G. Partsarthi? Because, like I said, the consensus right now seems to be, and we don't know how this spring offensive, quote unquote, how it's going to play out, but right now it seems to be in a stalemate. So any form of end to this war as it stands today would necessarily mean that Ukraine will have to give up some of its territory that it had in its control before 25th of February 2022, but now it doesn't have in its control. And in Zelensky's own words, the aim of this war, according to him, is to retake every inch of land as it existed on 24th of February 2022.
Well, let's be quite clear now. Biden is heading for an election. He thinks he's be better off if he's shown to be macho. Ukraine, let me be also clear that the Ukrainian-American honeymoon started well before the war. It was when Zelensky was in Washington, and they became rather cozy. So that is one reality. As far as the war fighting is concerned, yes, the Russians are being hardly pressed. And what is going to emerge from this Zaka of very serious significance is a possible Russian-Chinese alliance, which is on the cards. The Americans don't realize that they're going to be faced with an alliance soon enough. I wouldn't be surprised if Chinese weapons start pouring in. And having lived in Moscow, and when we were reminiscing about World War II, the Russians are capable of considerable sacrifice. So I think everybody is playing with fire, and they should all of them would do well to listen to Prime Minister Modi's advice that this is not an era of war. We were moving into another G20 summit here, and what we would like is peace. We don't want the what was happened in Jakarta to be repeated with the Russians and the Americans not looking or talking to each other, because G20 is meant to promote international economic cooperation.
Correct.
So yes, I'm not finding fault with the Ukrainians. I'm not finding fault with the Russians. But let the Ukrainians not behave as innocent as they do. They had a prime minister who went to Washington October 8th, 2 years ago, and signed up on something which constituted an alliance. And therefore, the other fact is that historically, even in territorial terms, Ukraine has never ruled Crimea. And I think my Russian friends would be well advised. Yes, Odessa is a good port where we can push a lot. But historically, their claims are for Crimea. And that's an issue which boiled even before this fighting broke out.
Correct.
Because Russian ships, it's the only place they can call on in the southern shores of the seas.
So I want to go to Colonel Lawrence Selin. And I think one of the points that Ambassador Partsarthi made, which was flagged over the weekend by none other than Secretary of State Antony Blinken when he met his Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi, and he said that he fears that China is going to arm Russia or is going to send Chinese arms into Russia. If that were to happen, what is America's plan B? How does America stop that from happening?
Well, it may already be happening. I've been monitoring the Chinese rail traffic, and what I see are cargo leaving from areas where there are Chinese military stockpiles and moving into Russian territory, into Russian logistic hubs. So it may be that the Chinese are already assisting Russia in supplying arms that may be used in the near future. Now, I think today's visit from a military standpoint was purely symbolic. One could guess that the air raid siren heard in the background today was part of the show. What is more important is whether or not the anticipated Russian offensive will begin and when. There's about a 6-week window before the muddy season begins, which would limit offensive operations. Now, the $500 million package Biden announced today would not affect that. It is for artillery shells, anti-tank weapons, radar systems. That will have little effect on a possible Russian offensive. The advanced tanks won't arrive for months, and no fighter aircraft has been promised. What Biden should be doing is promoting peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia, because the only ones benefiting from the conflict are the Chinese Communist Party and those associated with the anti-democratic World Economic Forum like George Soros. So, but instead of promoting peace, Biden is doing the opposite. He's fueling the conflict and driving it towards World War III. So in terms of peace negotiations, I think India could play an important role, and perhaps Prime Minister Modi is in a position to step up and help.
Let me go back to Dr. Sergey. If one of the reasons why Putin launched this war was because he felt that NATO was at his doorstep, with Ukraine potentially becoming a member, or that was his fear that Ukraine was going to be the last country to be embraced into the NATO orbit. But look at the events of the last 1 year. Ever since he launched this invasion, more and more countries are wanting to become NATO members. Sweden and Finland are now on the accelerated path for NATO membership. NATO has got a relevance today because of this war in a way it did not have prior to 24th February 2022.
Well, that's indeed
Dr. Sergey, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We'll see what will happen in the close future. First of all, I'm very agree with my American colleague who tells that right now Joe Biden, before the election, he should start to promote peace negotiation, and invite India like a mediator and global peacemaker to do it. He increased some aggressive mood. On not political but people level, we can see that Poles and the Russians, they are very friendly mood and support each other, because during the Second War, we was together fight against Hitler. And right now we can see even George Soros, my colleague mentioned his name, because he's from Hungary. He mentioned that some part the land of Ukraine belong to Hungary, and in close future it should be joined back. And a lot of other European politicians also look into Ukraine, not really to support. It's like, I again repeat it, like entertainment, like a drama in front of the camera, action, but action in front of the only video camera. It's not a real hero action. And a lot of politicians in Poland also looking forward to take some part of Ukraine and join to Poland.
So let me ask Peter Zalmayev, the problem is that it doesn't seem like any party, Ukraine or Russia or the Americans, are today looking at any kind of a peaceful resolution or moving towards some form of a ceasefire. I guess today's visit will only once again reinforce the perception that America will continue to stand by the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army, and as more and more Ukrainian soldiers die and this fighting continues and continues, we are not going to, get rid of this stalemate. So the problem in moving towards a peaceful resolution is none of the actors are A, talking about it, and B, if you were to freeze this conflict, if this were to be a frozen conflict right now, the only way you can resolve this in some form of a peace is if Ukraine says, okay, the parts of Donbass which Russia now controls, it gets to keep.
I do not think that this, even if I were to take a devil's advocate's position and say, let's just give Putin what he's already gotten, that's not going to satisfy Putin. You know, when we hear about Ukrainian soldiers dying here and this, the Moscow propaganda person who is also on our program who just spoke before me, you know, they are forgetting that there are many more Russian soldiers who are dying than Ukrainian soldiers, because they're the ones going on offensive, and the side attacking always loses more. Vladimir Putin has shown complete and utter disregard to the life of his soldiers. The Ukraine has taken a very different position. We're just not there yet as far as negotiating with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin has continued expressing his maximalist goal of destroying Ukraine or controlling it one way or the other. He's not interested necessarily in any territorial acquisitions. He considers Ukraine as anti-Russia, and he wants it to disappear as a sovereign state. The West cannot afford to create this precedent where a strong nuclear armed power can just walk in to a neighborhood next door and annex territory 19th century style. What our, you know, I just wanted before finishing, I just want to also note that the previous speaker, he was spouting pure Russian propaganda, and I want I want our viewers to know that this was Russian propaganda as far as Hungary or Poland wanting a piece of Ukraine's territory. They are projecting their own imperialist wishes on other countries, whether they believe it sincerely or not. This has nothing in truth. The West has banded together because, you know, where Ukraine is fighting for Western values. The only way Ukraine will be secure sitting side by side with Russia is when and if it joins NATO and the European Union.
Okay, so let me go back to Ambassador Parthasarathi. I mean, whichever way this conflict ends, those last two sentences that our friend from Ukraine said, that is almost an inevitability, that Ukraine will have to be part of NATO in some form or fashion, or have security guarantees from NATO or from the United States, and it will become a part of the European Union. If Putin's idea in launching this war was to deter Ukraine from doing that, he's probably achieved the opposite effect.
Well, this is what the Ukrainians say, and I don't blame the Ukrainians for saying it. Russia is a much bigger power. But I would ask my Ukrainian friends to remember, the Soviet Union was 16 republics. Why is it only Ukraine has picked a fight with Russia? None of the others. I travel a lot in Central Asia. They're quite happy. I attend meetings. I've been present in meetings of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They're all happy. So I think I'm not casting blame on anyone. But what I said, this is not, Prime Minister said, this is not an era of war. For God's sake, sit down and talk. I don't want to see the Chinese now moving into another area of power. We work with the Americans in the Shanghai Cooperation in a number of things, ranging from the Quad to what we have developed to our west. It's been a very close military relationship. But we also have a good relationship with our Russian friends.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, you're making this, converting what are Ukraine's ambitions into a US-Russian war. Is that what you want? The world certainly doesn't.
Okay.
And as far as Ukraine is concerned, I want to say this. Knowing the Soviet Union, having lived there, I don't think if they wanted territory, they will be looking elsewhere. So their aim really is Crimea. And Ukraine has never ruled Crimea. It has been access for the Russia to the sea. And I think you and your Prime Minister was there in Washington. This was realized. So Ukraine, we respect. You're doing so well after your independence, the agricultural exports all over the world. For God's sake, let's get down to economics and living in peace.
All right. Okay. I got to leave it at that. I'm completely out of time. I'm completely out of time. Thank you very much to Ambassador Parthasarathi, Peter Zalmayev, Colonel Selen, and, of course, our friend from Russia, Dr. Sergey. We'll keep a keen eye out on further developments as they play out in this week, when it'll be 1 year since this war began. Meanwhile, there was high drama across our borders on the west in Pakistan, where outside the Lahore High Court today, as former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan managed to get bail in a terror case. There was drama as tens of thousands of PTI workers, his party, they surrounded the court premises, and late in the evening, Khan got bail. Politically, for the Shahbaz Sharif regime, it made no sense to arrest Imran Khan and make him into some kind of political martyr. But the larger question, and perhaps an existential one that stares Pakistan in the face, how is any of this going to fix the Pakistan economy? That is the million-dollar question. So former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan appeared in the Lahore High Court today for a hearing on his bail application in a case linked to violent protests outside the Election Commission last year. While Imran Khan ended up getting bail, there was a fair share of drama outside the High Court. His convoy was showered with rose petals as it made its way inside the High Court premises. There were a large number of PTI supporters surrounding with cars, chanting slogans of support. Imran Khan, who was on a wheelchair because of being shot in the leg during a rally in November, reached there a little past 6 o'clock in the evening, but he only made it inside the courtroom a good 90 minutes later because his convoy faced difficulty in moving because of the large number of lawyers and supporters who had gathered there. So what exactly is this case that has left Imran Khan in the dock? A terrorism case was filed against Imran in October of 2022. This is after PTI workers took to the streets and held demonstrations outside the Election Commission of Pakistan. The PTI leadership had encouraged these protests after the apex poll body disqualified Imran Khan from holding public office in the Toshakhana case. The protests snowballed into clashes between the protesters and the police in cities like Islamabad, Karachi, Peshawar. There were also multiple instances of vandalism reported during these protests. But Imran Khan is just another factor adding to the growing instability in Pakistan that fundamentally stems from its economic crisis. Today, the International Monetary Fund warned that Pakistan must take steps to ensure that its high earners pay taxes and only the poor get subsidies. In an interview with a German television channel, IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva has said that it shouldn't be that wealthy in Pakistan benefit from subsidies. It should instead be the poor who benefit from subsidies. Those who are making good money need to contribute to the economy. Pakistan needs to be able to function like a normal country and not get into a dangerous place where its debt needs to be restructured. Now, the IMF's chief's statement came just days after a team from the global monetary body visited Pakistan for 10 days and they left without promising any bailout. The talks hit a snag as both sides were not able to reach an agreement on external financing estimates and the precise domestic fiscal measures that need to go. Now, both sides agreed to a set of measures that could still help clinch the deal. Pakistan entered a $6 billion IMF program during Imran Khan's tenure in 2019. That package was increased to $7 billion last year. Currently, the 9th review is going on for the release of a little over $1 billion. But Pakistan's defense minister claims that the country has already defaulted. Khwaja Asif said that they are residents of a bankrupt country and that Pakistan has defaulted and there exists an economic meltdown in the country. Asif said that everyone, including the establishment, the bureaucracy, the politicians, they are all responsible for the current situation. And that the IMF does not have any solutions because they lie within the country.
आपने सुना होगा डिफॉल्ट हो रहा है या दिवालिया हो रहा है या मेल्टडाउन हो रहा है वो हो चुका हुआ है हमारे मुल्क के इस वक्त हालात हम एक दिवालिया मुल्क के रहने वाले हैं हमें 200-300 मिलियन डॉलर के लिए मैंने खुद देखा है मिन्नतें करते हुए अपने हुक्मरानों को मैं उनके साथ होता हूं.
So what exactly would happen if Pakistan were to actually default on its debt? For starters, the country will be unable to repay its commercial loans. The central bank will have turned down debt repayment to service payments to commercial lenders. This will, of course, trigger automatically a downgrading of the country's credit rating by agencies like Moody's and S&P and Fitch. The decrease in dollar inflows will further limit the country's ability to import essential items. This, in turn, will impact the economic output. Inflation, which is already sky high, will further skyrocket. So let's break down the economic meltdown of Pakistan in numbers. Pakistan's external debt servicing rose by 70% in the first 2 quarters of 2022-23. In the first half of the fiscal year, Pakistan paid a little over $10 billion in just servicing its external debt. Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves are dwindling. They're down to just $3 billion, which can barely cover 3 weeks of imports. Its fiscal deficit widened to 43%. The lack of fiscal prudence is one of the reasons why the IMF is delaying this release of a payout. The IMF has asked Islamabad to introduce austerity measures like an increase in energy costs, a jump in taxation rates, and a hike in key lending rates. Crisis hit Pakistan recorded a new high in inflation as it went past 38.5 last week. The Pakistani rupee against the dollar is another indicator of how bad things are. The exchange rate right now is 262 Pakistani rupees to the dollar. The Shahbaz Sharif government has imposed massive new taxes. It's also increased prices of 34 items, including that of fuel. Petrol right now in Pakistan costs 272 rupees, Pakistani rupees per litre. Milk costs just as much. It's 250 rupees a litre for a packet of milk. 320 rupees for a kilogram of curd. Eggs, again, 310 rupees for a dozen eggs in Pakistan. Chicken is selling at 780 rupees for a kg. Rice is selling at 160 rupees a kg. And flour, wheat flour, is selling at 150 to 175 per kilogram. Joining me now is Sharat Sabharwal. He's a former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for speaking with us. Imran Khan managing to get bail today in that terror case. But the show of strength of his supporters outside the Lahore High Court, do you believe he's already setting the stage for potentially making a comeback of sorts? Is his stock, politically speaking, going further and further up with each passing day, not least because of how badly the Sharif government is handling the economic questions that they face?
Yeah, I think it would be short-sighted. Look, what is happening is Imran Khan, after his ouster, he was not very good at governance. And when he was ousted, he had lost a lot of popularity. His popularity rating was very low. Since then, he has continued to gain in popularity. And the government has continued to lose it, especially because of the hard steps that it has had to take to set right the economy, which is still not been fully put on the rails. Now, in such a situation, the government, of course, has been trying to, get some kind of decision either by the Election Commission or by the courts to disqualify him, much in the manner in which Nawaz Sharif was disqualified from holding public office. But I believe any such attempt would be a short-sighted attempt because it would further boost his popularity.
Let's say even if elections were to be held this year and Imran Khan and his party came back to power, there is a school of thought which says the gravity of problems that Pakistan is facing right now, the economic problems front and center, is so big that no prime minister will be able to fix it.
No prime minister, as I have often said in my writings also, when Imran Khan was ousted, they said he wasn't successful. Nawaz Sharif ousted 3 times. They said he wasn't successful. Which prime minister, a civilian leader or a military leader even of Pakistan can succeed with Pakistan's current external and internal orientation? Let me explain it. Externally, adversarial posture towards India. Now, that means that has always meant a very heavy burden on the Pakistani economy. The defense budget has been, in Pakistan's history, at times 6-7% of GDP, the declared defense budget. Today, it's about 3% of GDP, the declared budget, but much more is believed to be spent off budget books. Now, this burden has grown and has become unbearable as the gap between the economies of the two countries has grown. Adversarial posture towards a much bigger and better endowed country. The Indian economy is now 10 times Pakistan's economy, and that gap is growing fast. So that's unbearable burden. The second, of course, some structural problems of the economy which haven't been addressed over the years. And there is no appetite to address them because that hurts the interests of the elites, the landlords, the large industry, and so on. Above all, the armed forces economic empire. They have an extensive economic empire in Pakistan. So that's one problem. You are seeing those problems today. Pakistan is on the verge of a default. It's bankrupt. Even if they scrape through today, they will come back to this situation time and again as they have done in the past. So that's one. The other, of course, is, the problems with Afghanistan now. They had hoped when the Taliban came to power, they would help them in controlling TTP. A short-sighted policy. That has not happened. And TTP now is mounting increasing number of terror attacks.
This idea that you talked about, this renter economy, whether it's folks in the army who are doing it, the rich landlords, the rich industrialists, are sort of giving way to this sort of I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Do you think that the IMF, the changes that it has demanded, the structural changes it has demanded, no government will be able to push through in Pakistan because of this confluence of these vested interests who are all benefiting from this renter economy?
Not for the moment. Look, IMF, over the years, I have seen many negotiations. Pakistan has had multiple programs with IMF, pulled out of nearly all of them without fulfilling the conditions midway.
Okay.
And the current extended fund facility has been in trouble, time and again, as it is today. We don't know whether it will go through again or not. The IMF has not spoken so much openly about defense budget as about controlling expenditure, but also increasing revenues. What they are insisting on now is tax the rich, tax the privileged, and orient subsidies towards those who deserve them, not those who are already rich. And that I don't see any appetite at the moment. As I said, those external and internal orientation, there is no consideration to change them. One doesn't see that that's on the cards. Look, simple example I would take, trade with India. That's something which can benefit the economy. When I was High Commissioner, then they moved briefly away from linking trade to political issues. And 2 years we did significant work, 2011-12. The assessment of their own economists was that would lead open trade with India at least 1 percentage point, if not more, to Pakistan's GDP growth. And yet, because of their fractious polity today, they are unable to resume trade, which was stopped by Imran Khan, as you know, suspended after a withdrawal of special status of Jammu and Kashmir by India. So that's just one example. There is not a single rational step on the cards. They tried to avoid, imposing taxes and taking the measures which IMF was insisting on for a long time. They went to Saudi Arabia, they went to the UAE, went to China. They got some money out of the UAE. But all of them also advised them, first fix things with the IMF. Then we'll, see China, I'm sure will roll over. 10 billion is due to them this year till June. As the program with IMF goes through, the Chinese may be willing to roll that over.
All right.
Have an interest in seeing Pakistan going broke.
All right, Ambassador Sabharwal, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how this story plays out. As always, for your fascinating insights into what's going on really in Pakistan. Thanks very much. That's Ambassador Sharad Sabharwal. Meanwhile, shifting focus now to Maharashtra, where after losing the Shiv Sena name and the party symbol, former Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has said that while the identity of Shiv Sena has been stolen by the Shinde faction, the spirit of the party will always belong to the Thackerays. He also accused the Election Commission of being compromised and demanded that it be disbanded. The Thackeray faction has also moved to the Supreme Court, where the matter has been listed for tomorrow. Will the top court finally settle this legacy war?
चुनाव आयोग ने जो निर्णय दिया है उसका मैं स्वागत करता हूं। ये लोकशाही का विजय है। हिंदू हृदय सम्राट बाला साहेब ठाकरे जी, धर्मवीर आनंद दिघे जी, इनके विचारों का विजय है।
अगर चुनाव आयोग जिसको कहा जाता है वो ही अगर उसकी नियुक्ति की जाए तो चुनाव आयोग का। इसलिए मैं कहता हूँ कि वो बर्खास्त करना चाहिए। हमारा विश्वास बिल्कुल नहीं है। इसके पहले भी ईवीएम वगैरह सारी चीजों पर हमने हमारी आशंका जताई थी, आज भी सारे लोग जता रहे हैं और मैं तो मानता हूँ कि इसको तुरंत बर्खास्त करना चाहिए और जो भी सुनवाई है सुप्रीम कोर्ट में होनी चाहिए।
All right, I want to go across to Anand Dubey. He's a Shiv Sena leader from the Uddhav faction. Krishna Hegde, Shiv Sena leader from the Shinde faction, is also joining us. आनंद दुबे जी, पहले तो पार्टी गई, उसके बाद चुनाव का सिंबल भी गया आपका। अभी तो आज लेजिस्लेचर पार्टी का जो दफ्तर है, जो ऑफिस है असेंबली के अंदर, वो भी चला गया। बीएमसी के अंदर जो ऑफिस है वो भी चला गया। तो बचा क्या है आपके पास?
अभी हमारे पास आत्मविश्वास बचा है, आगे कुछ कर दिखाने की प्रेरणा बची है और जनता की सबसे बड़ी अदालत में भी जाना बाकी है। ठीक है, चुनाव आयोग ने एक फैसला दिया, कुछ लोग उस फैसले का स्वागत कर रहे हैं, हम उस फैसले का स्वागत नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम उस फैसले से सहमत नहीं है। उसके कुछ कारण है, हम हवा में बात नहीं करते हैं। सबसे पहला कारण कि जब चुनाव आयोग में हमारी बहस चल रही है और साथ ही साथ सुप्रीम कोर्ट में चल रही है, तो हमने निवेदन किया था कि चुनाव आयोग का निर्णय सुप्रीम कोर्ट के बाद आए, क्योंकि चुनाव आयोग यदि कोई निर्णय देता है तो हम सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जा सकते हैं और सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोई निर्णय देता है तो हम चुनाव आयोग में नहीं जा सकते। तो हमने तर्क दिया था कि पहले चुनाव आयोग निर्णय न दे, पहले सुप्रीम कोर्ट कोई निर्णय दे दे ताकि हम वहां पर जा सके।
नहीं, लेकिन दोनों अलग अलग मैटर है दुबे जी। एक तो सिंबल का इश्यू था जो चुनाव आयोग के सामने था, और दूसरा जो है डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन का मैटर है, जो लीगल मैटर है, जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने है। तो दोनों अलग अलग हैं।
लेकिन चुनाव आयोग का जो निर्णय आया है, इससे शिंदे गुट को बल मिल रहा है, क्योंकि वो इस आधार पे वहां बहस करेंगे कि भाई शिवसेना पार्टी को लेकर कोई विवाद नहीं है, ये पार्टी एकनाथ शिंदे की है, हो सकता है कि उसको एक साधन बना दे। तो हम बार बार क्या मांग कर रहे थे कि भाई या तो निर्णय आप सुप्रीम कोर्ट के बाद दीजिए।
What was the tearing hurry for the election commission to come up with this decision at a time when the Supreme Court itself is apprised of this matter? Supreme Court तो सुन रही थी ये जो पूरी कार्रवाई है, लेकिन what was the tearing need for चुनाव आयोग to come up with this decision? आज उद्धव ठाकरे ने ये भी बोल दिया कि this has to be disbanded.
There was no tearing need. It is already 6 months and there has to be a decision which has to be taken. Before that, there was a by-election in Andheri and the election commission gave both the parties 2 new names and 2 new symbols. And the election commission, this decision was pending. So election commission has taken its decision after weighing all the pros and cons. They have seen that 75% of the party is with us, 76% of the elected votes are with us, 13 of the 18 MPs are with us, 40 of the 56 MLAs and another 10, that is a total 50 MLAs are with us. State presidents and executive committee members are with us. They have also seen that we have given enough affidavits like they have given, and there have been so many, complaints of frauds which have been registered.
But Mr. Hegde, you may have all of this, legislators, MPs, offices, so on and so forth. One second. The one thing you don't have, Mr. Hegde, one thing you don't have is the Thackeray name. And that was in ample evidence even over the weekend when Uddhav Thackeray came and addressed party karyakartas outside the Sena Bhavan, outside Matoshri, standing on top of a car, much like his father did in the 1960s. So he is saying that आपके पास जो भी हो या ना हो, उनके पास ठाकरे नाम है.
Zaka, the 2019 elections were fought with the BJP and Shiv Sena in alliance on the Hindutva agenda, the Hindutva ideology. It is, before that also it was fought on the Hindutva ideology, and for 25 years it was fought on the Hindutva ideology with the BJP and Shiv Sena. In 2019, Uddhavji went with the Congress and the NCP for power to become the Chief Minister of Maharashtra.
Okay.
Even in this, duration, the MLAs and Eknath Shinde ji all went to him and said that we should reconsider this and go back with the BJP, which he had almost agreed. But for some reason, he did not do that.
आनंद दुबे जी, सिर्फ सत्ता के लालच के लिए उद्धव ठाकरे ने जाके कांग्रेस और एनसीपी के साथ हाथ मिलाया। जो पार्टियां आपने 30, 40, 35 साल से आप उनके खिलाफ थे, उनके साथ आपने हाथ जोड़ा और सरकार में सिर्फ इसीलिए आए क्योंकि सत्ता के लालच के पीछे पड़े थे उद्धव ठाकरे।
ये गलत बात है। आप देखिए कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने जिसकी मदद से अपने अपने जगह पर जगह बनाई, एक केंद्र सरकार में सत्ता पाई, राज्य सरकारों में आई, उन्हीं पार्टियों को सबसे पहले खत्म करने का काम किया। कुछ दिन पहले बिहार में जेपी नड्डा जी ने स्वयं मंच पर आकर कहा कि जो क्षेत्रीय पार्टियां हैं उनको हम खत्म कर देंगे। इनकी मंशा हमेशा से शिवसेना को खत्म करना थी, क्योंकि ये चाहते थे कि शिवसेना को सत्ता में भागीदारी न देना पड़े। हम शिवसेना के भरोसे जितनी ताकत लेनी थी ले चुके हैं, अब शिवसेना की कोई आवश्यकता नहीं है।
लेकिन दुबे जी
इसलिए
2019 के बाद तो आपके पास 50-56 एमएलए थे, वो मंत्री पद भी देने के लिए तैयार थे। तो किस मतलब एक ही वजह से वो जो गठबंधन था वो टूटा ना, और वो वजह ये थी वो वजह ये थी कि उद्धव ठाकरे को बनना था मुख्यमंत्री।
बिल्कुल नहीं। उद्धव ठाकरे जी एकनाथ शिंदे को मुख्यमंत्री बनाना चाहते थे। तो आपकी जानकारी के लिए बता दूं।
तो फिर किस वजह से वो टूटी गठबंधन, बताइए।
भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने कहा कि आपकी और हमारी कोई आधे आधे की बात ही नहीं हुई थी। जिसकी संख्या ज्यादा आई है अब उसी का मुख्यमंत्री बनेगा।
नहीं, आधे का तो बात ही नहीं बनती, क्योंकि उनको मिला 100 से ऊपर और आपको मिला 55, तो आधे की बात ही नहीं बनती तब।
नहीं तो फिर एक बात बताइए, जब आधे आधे की बात नहीं बनती है तो एक 40 से 50 सीट वाले एकनाथ शिंदे को मुख्यमंत्री क्यों बना दिया?
नहीं, वो तो बाद में हुआ ना। नहीं, वो तो बाद में हुआ, उसका कारण अलग है। Anyway, Krishna Hegde, I want a simple answer to a very simple question. I have to wrap up in a minute. Now that this symbol issue has been settled, why don't you go to the people, call for the BMC elections, let the people of Mumbai decide once and for all. दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाएगा.
Of course we'll call for the election, and of course we'll win the election, and we'll win the elections again in 2024 under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. And I will also tell you this, that what they have done was not good. How can they go back again in 2024 and speak about a Hindutva ideology along with the Congress party? It's just not going to work. So
Hegde ji, pure alliance arithmetic, if all three parties fight, Shiv Sena, Uddhav faction, plus Congress, plus NCP, you have an uphill battle. Let's face it, they have close to 45% vote share, maybe close to 50% vote share if all three of them fight together.
Zakaji, 2 plus 2 plus 2 is not always equal to 6. And let me tell you that we will sweep the polls, we will sweep the MP elections, and we will also sweep the MLA elections.
Okay.
Today also, we are close to 180 MLAs in the House, whereas the Congress, NCP and Uddhavji are not even 100. If they are so confident, let them call for a floor test and find out the strength. You'll know exactly whether even they cross 100
फ्लोर टेस्ट का टाइम तो गया, अभी तो जो भी टेस्ट होगा वो जनता के सामने होगा, जनता वाली टेस्ट
बिल्कुल होगा.
And we'll see which of the two factions has the final say, as it were. We'll leave it at that. I want to thank both our guests. Tomorrow again this matter is coming up in the Supreme Court. It's been listed, and we'll see if the CJI-led bench takes this up and how they may want to proceed with it purely from a legality point of view. But like I said, the ultimate decision and the ultimate settlement of this will happen in the People's Court, either in the BMC election or in 2024 Lok Sabha, or ultimately in the 2024 Vidhan Sabha election, and we'll see how that story plays out. Thanks very much for tuning in. Good night. So this is a huge message of support from the American president to his Ukrainian counterpart, and also to the Ukrainian people, that America is standing firmly and solidly behind this war effort. This is, of course, as far as Ukraine is concerned, an attempt to try, this is an existential crisis. I mean, if they lose this war, they lose their country. And as the country marks 1 year of this brutal war after having been launched as a special military operation by Vladimir Putin, it is now confirmed, and you can see these pictures of President Joe Biden of the United States walking down central Kyiv. He's meeting with President Zelensky and other senior members of the Ukrainian government. He will be subsequently going to Warsaw tomorrow, but we're expecting a briefing by senior government officials of Ukraine any moment now. In the run-up to this touchdown, as it were, of course, this was a highly secretive visit. It was kept under wraps for a number of days. in the run-up to this visit. And even this morning, it is not like information was trickling in either from the US White House administration or from media reports in the US about the possibility of Biden, touching down in Kiev. But now you can see those live pictures of US President Joe Biden in Kiev, meeting with Zelensky as well as other senior leaders of the Ukrainian government. He's going to spend a few hours there and then make his way towards Warsaw to Poland, where he's expected to give a major speech tomorrow on this one-year war effort. So clearly, this is a big moment. Symbolically, maybe not materially, but definitely symbolically, the fact that the US president is in Kiev. We've had, the UK Prime Minister, when Boris Johnson was the UK Prime Minister, he had gone to Kiev. We've seen other leaders, the former Israeli Prime Minister had gone to Kiev, but we haven't seen the American president go to Kiev since this war began. So I think it's a significant moment, this, definitely high on optics, high on solidarity, the photographs, the symbolism, that'll be huge. But what may this translate into in terms of material support for Ukraine, I think that is something that we'll have to wait and watch out for.
Absolutely. And Zaka, like you rightly said, this is one of the very important, in fact, decisive moments in Joe Biden's presidency. And of course, all eyes will be on that very speech, or the kind of messaging that he sends out to Russia through that speech in Warsaw.
Absolutely. So that was there you can see the still, you can see both Zelensky and Biden to the right and Zelensky to his left. They are walking downtown Kiev is what we've been told. This is a hugely symbolic moment, no doubt about it. Like I said, since this war began, the US president has not touched down in Kiev. He has now. And the fact that this entire visit was supposed to be to Poland tomorrow, he was supposed to make a big speech there in Poland. But en route to Poland, en route to Warsaw, he's now landed in Kiev. And it's a significant, photographic sort of memory, if you will, or a turn in the road as far as this war is concerned, because it's signaling unequivocal support. I think these images will be on the front pages of all newspapers, from the New York Times to Washington Post. All websites across the world are going to be carrying this. Television channels like CNN News 18 are reporting this. I think it's hugely powerful on symbolism. Materially, will he make any new announcement of further military aid? Remember, the US is committed to the Abrams tanks. That announcement was made just a few weeks ago. The US alone has contributed close to $50 billion in military and non-military aid to Ukraine since this war began. The Europeans have contributed a substantial number as well. So I think this is going to be, again, read in Western capitals, certainly as a message of solidarity. That's how it's going to be perceived in Kiev as well. But in Moscow, I think Putin is going to be watching this very, very closely as this war grinds into some kind of a stalemate, and people are expecting a spring offensive by Russia. They're expecting an air assault and possibly further ground assaults as well, particularly in eastern Ukraine, where in places like Bakhmut, it seems like the crisis, that this war has ground down into a stalemate. So I think at a time such as this, for Joe Biden to land up in Kiev, be seen side by side with Zelensky, walk down, some of the main streets there, is conveying an absolutely unequivocal message of support and solidarity with Ukraine. And I think this is a significant moment. It's really high on symbolism, and this photograph, like I said, is going to be pasted all across news media outlets around the world.
Zaka, how does one read this? Is a big development that's coming in from Ukraine. The entire attendance of Joe Biden there.
Oh, it's a huge story. The fact that Joe Biden, the US president, is today in Kiev. He's meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, as well as other senior officials. These are the first pictures that we have of him in downtown Kiev, in central Kiev. Remember, for the last hour or so in Kiev, air raid sirens have been going off. That is to indicate that there is a VVIP movement. There are videos doing the rounds of social media as well of his cavalcade passing by downtown Kiev. We can now confirm Leslia Velenko, who is a senior Ukrainian member of parliament, has confirmed that US President Joe Biden has landed in Kiev. Remember, he's en route to Poland. He's supposed to go to Warsaw tomorrow. So this is en route to Poland. You can see the first pictures of US President Joe Biden just as we approach the first anniversary of this war. This war was launched on the 24th.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. New week, new headlines. Biden landed in Ukraine and hogged all of them. But why did he go? And what did he do there? We'll tell you all about it. Also, all the court drama in Pakistan involving Imran Khan. Meanwhile, the Taliban want to convert military bases into special economic zones. America is dealing with a multi-trillion-dollar debt problem. Credit card bills are at a record high. Social media giants want you to cough up money. And why do people touch and sometimes break artworks? A $42,000 balloon dog was shattered and it has triggered a very interesting discussion. All of this and more is coming up. The headlines first. Is Iran close to making an atom bomb? Tehran denies reports that it has enriched uranium to 84%. You need 90% to make a bomb. The International Atomic Energy Agency has sought an explanation from Iran. Tensions spiral between Pakistan and Afghanistan.